Have you ever wondered what it would take to crash an entire economy? Would it be a devastating war? A deadly plague? An empire collapsing overnight? What if I told you that one man managed to shake the economy of multiple kingdoms simply by giving away too much gold? Not in the modern world. More than 700 years ago, his name was Mansa Musa, and history remembers him as the richest man who ever lived. But wealth is only the beginning of this story, because Mansa Musa didn't just own unimaginable riches. He ruled an empire so vast that it controlled the world's most valuable resource. His cities attracted merchants from thousands of miles away. His scholars transformed the intellectual landscape of Africa. And when he embarked on a single journey across the Sahara Desert, the effects rippled across continents for years. His fortune became legend. His pilgrimage became history. And his empire challenged everything people think they know about the medieval world. Because while Europe struggled through political instability and economic hardship, a powerful African civilization was building universities, funding architects, controlling global trade, and accumulating extraordinary wealth. So how did one emperor become richer than anyone before or since? What made the Mali Empire one of the greatest civilizations of its time? And why is this remarkable chapter of history so often overlooked? This is the story of Mansa Musa, the emperor whose wealth became legend, whose journey reshaped economies, and whose legacy continues to inspire the world today. To understand Mansa Musa, you first have to understand the empire he inherited. The year is the early 1300s. Across West Africa stretched one of the largest and most prosperous empires on earth, the Mali Empire. Covering territory across present-day Mali, Senegal, Guinea, Mauritania, Niger, and beyond, it sat at the crossroads of some of the world's busiest trade routes. But Mali's true strength wasn't simply its size. It was what lay beneath its soil: gold. In the medieval world, gold wasn't just jewelry or decoration, it was money. It financed kingdoms, armies, trade, and diplomacy. And Mali possessed an astonishing share of the world's known gold supply. For centuries, caravans carrying salt from the Sahara crossed the desert to exchange it for gold from the forests farther south. Salt preserved food. Gold created wealth. Together, they fueled an international trading network linking West Africa to North Africa, the Middle East, and even Europe. Thousands of camels crossed the desert every year, carrying precious cargo through some of the harshest conditions on Earth. It wasn't just merchants risking everything. Scholars, travelers, diplomats, and explorers also journeyed to Mali, drawn by stories of a thriving empire unlike anything they had imagined. By the beginning of the 14th century, Mali had become one of the wealthiest states in the known world. Then came a ruler who would elevate that reputation beyond anything history had ever seen. His name was Musa Keita, known today as Mansa Musa. Mansa wasn't his first name, it was his title. It meant emperor. Before taking the throne, Musa served as deputy ruler under his predecessor, who reportedly launched an ambitious expedition into the Atlantic Ocean with hundreds of ships. The fleet never returned. With the emperor gone, Musa assumed leadership. Few could have predicted what came next. Under his rule, the Mali Empire expanded its borders, strengthened trade, improved administration, and secured important commercial centers. But unlike many rulers remembered only for conquest, Musa also invested heavily in knowledge, religion, and culture. He understood that true power wasn't measured solely by military victories. It was measured by what a civilization could build: mosques, libraries, schools, cities, and nowhere reflected that vision more than Timbuktu. Today, many people know the name. Few understand what it truly represented. Timbuktu wasn't an isolated desert outpost. It was one of the world's great centers of learning. Students traveled enormous distances to study theology, astronomy, mathematics, law, literature, and medicine. Its scholars produced manuscripts that preserved centuries of knowledge. Its markets attracted merchants from across Africa and beyond. Its reputation rivaled some of the greatest intellectual centers of its era. But despite everything Musa accomplished at home, one event would make his name echo across history. In 1324, Mansa Musa announced he would undertake the Hajj, the sacred pilgrimage to Mecca required of Muslims who are able to make the journey. For most believers, it was the journey of a lifetime. For Mansa Musa, it became one of the most extraordinary expeditions ever recorded. No one had ever seen anything like it. In 1324, Mansa Musa began a journey that would transform him from a powerful African ruler into a legend known across continents. His destination was Mecca, thousands of miles away. But this was not an ordinary pilgrimage. This was a journey unlike anything the medieval world had witnessed. According to historical accounts, Mansa Musa traveled with an enormous caravan that included thousands of soldiers, officials, servants, merchants, and attendants. And among them were hundreds of camels carrying one of the most valuable resources on earth: gold. For months, the caravan crossed the Sahara Desert, one of the most dangerous environments on the planet. The desert was unforgiving. Temperatures could become unbearable during the day, while freezing conditions could arrive at night. Travelers depended on carefully planned routes, knowledge of water sources, and experienced guides who understood how to survive the endless landscape of sand and stone. But Mansa Musa was not simply trying to survive the journey. He was making a statement. Everywhere he went, people witnessed the wealth and power of Mali. When the caravan reached Egypt, it entered one of the most important centers of the medieval world, Cairo. At the time, Cairo was a major hub of trade, culture, and politics. Merchants from Europe, Africa, and Asia gathered there. And then came Mansa Musa. The Egyptian people had seen wealthy rulers before, but they had never seen anything quite like this. Stories spread about the emperor from West Africa who traveled with unimaginable amounts of gold and gave generously to those around him. Mansa Musa distributed gold to officials, merchants, and ordinary people. He donated to religious institutions. He supported communities. His generosity became legendary. But something unexpected happened. There was so much gold entering the economy that its value began to decline. For years afterward, gold prices in parts of Egypt were affected by the sudden increase in supply. A ruler had unintentionally created an economic shock simply by spending his personal wealth. The story became one of the most famous examples of how even extreme wealth can have consequences. But there is an important detail often missed. The idea that Mansa Musa single-handedly destroyed an economy is likely exaggerated over time. Historical records suggest his gold donations caused disruption, but economies are complex. The real story is more fascinating. Mansa Musa revealed the incredible wealth and influence of an empire that many outside Africa barely understood. His pilgrimage changed how the world viewed Mali. Before his journey, many people outside West Africa knew little about the empire. Afterward, Mali became impossible to ignore. When Mansa Musa eventually reached Mecca, he completed his religious obligation and returned home. But he did not return as the same ruler who left. The journey had expanded his vision. He had witnessed some of the world's greatest cities, cultures, and institutions, and he wanted to bring that knowledge back to Mali. When he returned, he began transforming his empire into an even greater center of civilization. He brought architects, scholars, and artists back with him. New buildings rose, trade expanded, learning flourished, and one city in particular became the symbol of Mali's golden age: Timbuktu, a name that would become famous around the world. But the true story of Timbuktu was even greater than the myths. It was not a mysterious city at the edge of nowhere. It was a place where ideas traveled, where scholars gathered, where books were treasured, where knowledge was considered a form of wealth just as valuable as gold. And Mansa Musa understood something many rulers failed to recognize. An empire is not remembered only by how much it takes. It is remembered by what it creates. Under Musa's leadership, Mali became more than a wealthy kingdom. It became a center of civilization. But every empire eventually faces a challenge. How do you preserve greatness after the person who created it is gone? And what happens when the world moves on from the age of the legendary king? Mansa Musa died sometime around 1337, but the empire he built continued to carry his influence long after his death. His reign had changed the way the world viewed West Africa. Before Mansa Musa, many outside observers knew little about the civilizations that existed south of the Sahara. After him, maps changed, stories changed, the perception of Africa changed. One of the most famous examples came from European map makers. In 1375, a European map known as the Catalan Atlas included an image of an African ruler holding a that ruler was believed to represent Mansa Musa. To the world watching from afar, the message was clear. There was a powerful empire in Africa with enormous wealth, international connections, and a ruler important enough to appear on the maps of the medieval world. But Mansa Musa's greatest achievement was never simply his gold. Gold can be discovered. Gold can be traded. Gold can disappear. What made his reign extraordinary was how he used that wealth. He invested in architecture, he supported education, he encouraged trade, he helped transform cities into centers of knowledge and culture. One of the most famous structures associated with his reign was the Jingureber Mosque in Timbuktu. Built with the help of an architect brought from the wider Islamic world, it became a symbol of Mali's commitment to learning and faith. Over time, Timbuktu developed a reputation as a place where scholars collected and produced thousands of manuscripts. Students traveled there to study. Books became valuable possessions. Knowledge became part of the empire's identity. At its height, Mali was not just rich, it was influential. It connected different worlds. African gold helped fuel international trade networks that reached across the Mediterranean and beyond. Merchants traveled through Mali's cities. Ideas traveled with them. Languages, religions, technologies, and traditions mixed together. The empire was part of a much larger global story. Yet, despite its importance, the story of Mansa Musa remains unfamiliar to many people today. Why? Part of the reason is that much of African history was preserved differently from European history. Many African civilizations relied heavily on oral traditions, where history was passed down through generations by storytellers and historians known as griots. Written records existed as well, especially through scholars connected to the Islamic world, but many were overlooked or lost over time. Another reason is that historical narratives have often focused heavily on Europe, sometimes ignoring powerful civilizations elsewhere. For centuries, many people were taught a version of history where major wealth, innovation, and empire were concentrated in only a few regions. But Mansa Musa's story challenges that idea. It shows that during the medieval period, while many societies were developing in different parts of the world, one of the greatest empires on earth existed in West Africa. An empire built on trade. An empire built on knowledge. An empire built on ambition. But there is another reason Mansa Musa continues to fascinate people. The question everyone asks is simple. Was he really the richest person who ever lived? The answer is complicated. Comparing wealth across hundreds of years is nearly impossible. Modern billionaires have wealth measured through companies, stocks, and financial markets. Medieval rulers controlled land, resources, armies, and trade networks. Their wealth was not stored in a bank account. It was the power of an entire empire. So when historians call Mansa Musa the richest person in history, they are not saying his fortune can be calculated exactly. They are recognizing the extraordinary scale of his influence and resources. His wealth was so great that centuries later, people are still trying to understand it. But perhaps the most important lesson from Mansa Musa's life is not about money. It is about what happens when wealth is combined with vision. Because having resources alone does not create greatness. The question is what you choose to do with them. Mansa Musa could have used his fortune only to expand his personal power. Instead, he used it to build. He built relationships between civilizations. He built institutions. He built a legacy that survived long after his empire's golden age ended. The Mali Empire would eventually decline. New powers would rise. Trade routes would change. Cities would transform. But the story of Mansa Musa remained. A story of a king who crossed deserts with unimaginable wealth. A story of an empire that challenged the world's expectations. A story proving that some of history's greatest civilizations were not hidden because they were insignificant. They were hidden because the world forgot to look. More than 700 years later, Mansa Musa's name still carries a powerful message. Great civilizations have always existed in every corner of the world. Great leaders have always emerged from unexpected places. And history is far larger than the stories we are first taught. Because once, in the heart of West Africa, there was an emperor whose wealth amazed the world, whose journey changed economies, and whose legacy continues to remind us that the greatest treasures of civilization are not only found in gold, they are found in knowledge, ambition, and the ability to build something that lasts. This was the incredible story of Mansa Musa, the Emperor of Mali, the king whose gold made the world pay attention.